important caveat, and there's always a caveat with the spiritual life, is we will have really healthy habits that are like compounding interest. They start as a little snowball, we start them rolling downhill. By the end, it's a big old like avalanche of really good stuff. Things like basic core honesty, little things like that clearly are going to be habits that build success. And that's not necessarily what we're talking about here today. Today, we're talking about some of our other formulas and how we can develop them, particularly at a young age, and just sort of overplay that hand, because every season of life will need different things. So thank you very much for joining me today, and let's have a little conversation around this together. So it starts with a basic premise, and I think this is super significant, which is that we have problems and we have patterns. And so much of the time we look at the problem, like here is the problem, and we don't address the pattern. In other words, like a business example might be there's oil spilled on the floor, so we clean up the oil. That's the problem. But what's the pattern? Why do we see that same little spill of oil happening every couple of weeks? Well, that's the pattern. And that's what we're really talking about today is how to look at this pattern in a much healthier way, and to see where that pattern, where we have developed a certain formula, and that the pattern really needs to shift a great deal. Now, let's take a look just at a simple one around work, and then we'll look at one that's more of a personal one in terms of relational. So one is work related, one's relational oriented. One in terms of work would be when we're younger and we're trying to sort of get our families launched and get things moving. We can find a formula that is, look, I'm going to work more than 40 hours a week. I'm going to say yes to every promotion. I'm going to say yes to every move. I'm going to say yes to every job. I'm going to go and go and go and go and go and go. I know for me as a pastor, with a young family, we just kept on, really, really working at it and really sort of plugging at it pretty hard. And with plugging at it, that meant doing, like 20 plus weddings a year, plus funerals, plus baptisms. So, most of the year, probably a half to 2/3 of weekends, we're tied up, not only with Sunday services, but with like a Saturday wedding or a Friday baptism or a memorial service in there, like all these tie-ups. So that was sort of the formula, was the way to work it, the way to make sure everybody had a roof over their head and we had a nice standard of living, was to work and 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 work. And as many of you know, when you reach a certain point, you have to stop doing. You can't do that anymore because it's no longer the priority. But if we have that in our head as the formula, this is how we are successful, this work, 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 it's hard to shut that off. I had wonderful parents, self-employed, and so I grew up with 1 week of vacation a year, and it was just about work, and it was just about the family business. Did that have advantages to it? Obviously, but it also had disadvantages that have created a certain formula that takes a while till you start to question, go like, yeah, I don't really need to do that. 40 hours is just fine, and not everything needs done every day, but it takes a long time to do that. A personal one that's really, I think, significant is because I see it a lot, is a lot of people have a pattern where from a young age they start to divide the world into a binary, which I think we probably all do in certain areas. And what that means is that we get very used to quickly trying to recognize who's in and who's out. And we have developed a pattern that means if you mess with me, you mess with my friends, you mess with my family, anything, I am right in your grill. It's this very sort of confrontational perspective, like, don't mess with me. And can that have a lot of great things in life? Yeah, some of those people are really important sort of protectors of sorts out there in our world. Because they're going to say the thing that needs to be said. They're going to take the action that needs to be taken. But you can imagine we can overplay that. It's that age-old thing, which is to a hammer, everything's a nail. It's like if your perspective is you've got to hammer at everything. Life is binary, and if you don't stand up for yourself, people are going to run over you. Hear that a lot from people, and there's huge caution around that. If I don't stand up for myself, people are just going to run over me. I'm going to stand up for myself. I'm going to stand up for me. Well, yeah, that can work, and sometimes very appropriate, but that can create sort of a crazy pattern that just becomes very, very off-putting to other people. And people like that oftentimes find themselves more and more isolated from others because it's just too much. There's just too much binary thought, and too much what's judging people's motives. Not everybody's out to pull one over on you, that's for sure. So those are two examples, friends. And what we need to do is we just need to use spirituality. We need to be, follow the Lord's model here and really be willing to question all those paradigms. And Jesus does it over and over and over again. Anytime you see a reference to a Samaritan, that's Jesus. He's just questioning the dominant paradigm. Anytime you see him going after Pharisees and Sadducees, in other words, the select, those with deep religious knowledge, and anytime you see him going after them, he's trying to break a pattern. He's trying to break a paradigm, a recipe for success, which theirs was just following the law, no matter what, to every jot, to every tittle. And Jesus is constantly poking at that. And those paradigms are so important for us to remember to question again and again. And the challenge with questioning them is that a lot of the time we see them just like water. We're like fish swimming in water, and we don't even know what water is because we're surrounded by it. So the takeaway for today is, look where you're feeling some friction points in your life, and just don't look at the problem, look at the pattern, and don't look at it in other people like, oh yeah, that's their problem, this is what they are constantly doing. Look at your pattern of reaction. How do you tend to react to others? And take a look, is that serving the better angels of your nature now? Is that making you a more loving, compassionate, connected person? And if it is, great. And if it isn't, take a look at it. And important, again, caveat, there's no absolute always answers, Jesus is very loving, very kind. And then he kicks some butt when he sends the money changers out of the temple. Both, it's a both and answer. It's just about really finding the wisdom to know when to do certain things and where we can exercise our power very successfully. And we won't do that unless we really get to the point where we can success often creates failures, quote unquote, because we get these recipes for success. And that's why oftentimes nothing fails like success, because we get a pattern, we think we've got the pattern for all time, and the reality is the Lord is always leading us forward. This may have worked in this season, but the Lord is always asking us not to see it as something bad per se. See, that worked in this season. Now let me help you. I think it's how the Lord would say it. Let me help you see what works now in this season of life. So, best of wishes on that discovery, dear friends. So, take a little breath. And what we're going to do now is shift into our little meditation. So I'm going to ring the prayer bell here. Then we'll do a little prayer, little blessing, and then we'll say hi to friends on Facebook. So with that, let's get a little breath. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Amen. All right, dear friends, let's do a little quick look over here, see who has joined us. Alrighty, dighty. See some insights over here. These things taking a little minute to load. And again, as always, wishing everyone just a wonderful, wonderful day ahead. We definitely have a very busy day here at New Church Live, as we often do. Alrighty, ready. Ooh, this is taking a little while to load here. All right, Marcus, good morning to you, buddy. So, friends, wishing you all the very best. God bless, and we will